Nate, how you doing, man? What are you up to?
I'm good, Jay. I'm just hanging out in Colorado. Where you at?
Excellent. Well, I'm in San Francisco right now and out here visiting my family. Very thankful that I get the opportunity. But I'll tell you, the tech environment out here is pretty darn interesting too. And I'll have a teaser a little bit later on about something I saw yesterday.
I'm excited to hear about it. It's a great place for sure. I'm super pumped today though, because we have a special guest with us, Matt Daly. So Matt, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. And if you could just introduce yourself, tell the listeners a little bit about you.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Nice to see you again since South by. A lot of stuff has happened since then. I'm Matt Daly. I'm based in Austin, Texas. I've been in the immersive and game space for about 20 years. Definitely spun the gamut as far as stuff that I've done, but primarily my focus has been emerging technology, anything that kind of doesn't have a great rule set or playbook built for it yet. I'm usually the one who helps build the playbook. So everything from immersive products with Google and Microsoft tying together, hundreds of millions of community members inside of games to brands like World of Tanks, sort of big online video games. A lot of communications and marketing. I've helped sell a couple companies in the immersive space. Last few years, I've been a consultant working with a variety of brands on trying to solve just like big, hairy, complex problems that usually involve some kind of technology, from sustainability to health tech to aging in place to, again, my sweet spot, which is virtual worlds, metaverse, and immersive technologies. I've been on the board of South by Southwest for like 15 years, and that's like my church, and that's where we made some magic this year, and I love tacos.
And yeah, that's where we met, was South by. And I think you and Jay met at CES. But really happy you're joining us. We're going to talk about embodied AI, which is everyone's kind of on this AI train. Everyone's heard of AI, used it, come across it. Most people with, Chat GPT, Open, Gemini, whatever it is. But embodied AI, right? That's where we, take the AI out of the computer and we manifest it into a physical form through a robot, through some kind of system, through the stuff that you work with, right? With a little bit of the, application of that AI towards something that provides a service for you. So I'm excited to get your take on this and talk to you and Jay and just learn.
Yeah. And hey, Nate, thanks for that overview. It's really pretty neat because Matt and I met at the Consumer Electronics Show in January this year. And the context that has occurred and what we've gained from January just to March to where we are now today in June, as it's really mind blowing to me. We saw things like AI powered robotic lawnmowers, AI toothbrushes. I mean, there must have been at least a dozen of each of those two product lines being demoed on the innovation floor alone. And it was one thing to see an AI powered lawnmower running around on some fake grass at CES. It's an entirely different thing to put it in the context of the AI of things, which is a term we came up with, I'll say collectively at CES, where we looked at this and said the Internet of Things is now being enabled and empowered by artificial intelligence.
I'm really interested, like Matt, as all the stuff you're doing with the gaming and the virtual world and the tech stuff that you're employed with, what are you seeing that just makes you go, wow, in terms of AI?
AI in general, the dynamics of conversational interfaces is rocket propelled forward. Honestly, from an embodiment standpoint, audio only is something that I'm quite bullish on for a number of reasons. Partially because you stay clear of the area of the uncanny valley, visually speaking, whether it's a digital avatar or physical robotic avatar. I think the brain fills in a lot of the gaps very quickly, and your brain is really designed to do that from a pattern recognition standpoint. So, that combined with the fact that we're about to see one of the most interesting modalities for augmented reality is going to be the increasing sort of arms race between companies like Meta investing in this AR glasses modality that is audio first and starting to layer in aspects of visual interface, but really is like still primarily an audio interface. And then honestly, I'm still quite bullish on these things. Like, this is Apple's way of getting between you and your audio receptors and the entire rest of reality. So I'm still quite focused, and all the work that I'm doing and all the projects and pitching that I'm doing for creative projects and products still focuses first primarily on the conversational interface.
Have you seen what Google pushed out? I think at their TED Talk in February, it was their kind of answer to Facebook or Meta's Ray-Bans, right? But it's not the AR. And I know you held up the AirPods for the radio listeners, but they call it XR, right? like it's the next level. It's not just immersive, but it's kind of that bridge. Have you seen that? And is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, jokes about glass holes aside, I think that Google and Android XR are making the same kind of smart bet that is the antithesis of the Apple. Oh, my Vision Pro isn't actually. Should probably keep track of where my $4,000 headset is, but it's the antithesis of the Apple Vision Pro, right? It's low stakes, low cost. It's a form factor that everybody's used to. It's almost kind of perniciously deceptive because it just looks like a pair of glasses. But that combined with a smart, agentic orchestration for either specialized agents or one just BFF friend of yours, as a way of creating assistive layer of AI that is augmentative of your lived experience, in a way that is like truly like helpful to you and not something that's like just novel or wow factor, because novel and wow factor won't retain anybody for longer than, I think the average is like 43 seconds from my own research.
Yeah. And I remember from the TED Talk, the demo included like, hey, I forgot my room key. Do you know where I put it? And the glasses had seen it and kept the record of it and said, yeah, it's behind you on the shelf. And I was like, holy crap. Hey, that'd be super useful to me who, drove all the way to work one day and left my wallet at the house. Right. So I could use that practically. But the amount of data that it's digesting and then, categorizing and then keeping in a useful available space for you is pretty powerful. And I know, Jay, you have the Meta glasses and you're a huge fan of them, but this is next level for that.
To me, your point, Matt, I agree completely. The fact that I can really be so discreet in wearing them, and it does have a little bit of a warning in there. Like if I try and identify a person with a voice command, first of all, they would hear me say, hey, Meta, who is this? And then it would say, we don't identify people. So at least right now they're blocking like facial recognition and stuff like that. But the power of having just this hands-free, completely nondescript way of immersing myself. And I really like that model you talked about, how we're in essence buffering ourselves from the world with this technology, whether it's the AirPods in your ears, now becoming an intermediary between the outside world and your ear canals and your hearing, or in this case with the Meta glasses, and as the XR glasses come online from Google, having that relatively nondescript, hands-free way to start to intercede your visual interaction with the world as well.
Yeah, those use cases, it's like I like to say, I was saying this about every new hype cycle that I've encountered in my short life, is as soon as it becomes like boring and solves very, very boring day-to-day problems like where are my keys, and particularly when we stop calling it by the terminology that we as technologists use, is when we've gone wideband. When Google Maps is just like boring day to day, it's not magic anymore. It's just a thing that does the thing that you need it to do and solve your problems. So I think it's going to be the same thing with the intersection of AR and AI in this case. And it's going to be really boring, and it's going to be, what does this thing do for me? It's like, well, it does a bunch of things that you don't really need to worry about. And you may not even be aware that it's doing it half the time.
It's going to be like electricity, right? We're not going to consider it. We're not going to, I take for granted the fact that when I turn my light on, light comes on, right? I'm not thinking through the processes of how that works. Maybe occasionally when I get my electric bill every month, but it's part of the expectation of my daily life, and definitely see where XR, AR, AI is heading down that way outside of the computer in an embodied manner, for sure.
Yeah. I think there's a whole world of, and it's not just glasses, honestly. It's really just even my Alexa, that if I say her name, she's going to wake up. ALEXA Plus just came out, just rolled out into my house without my choice yesterday, and suddenly she has a completely different, more animated voice. I don't know if that's solving my problems better. It feels like it's kind of getting in the way of the utilitarian, dry aspect of what this device used to do for me. But the inevitability of the wave is obvious, that as we start talking to our computers more often, or just as often as typing into them, the voices on the other end are going to become increasingly human-like, for better or for worse.
You demoed something for us on stage at the Red Thread House at South by, and what was the name of that? Because I remember watching you give that speech, and it was shocking to me. So I initially thought of the Turing test, right? And had you not introduced it as an AI agent, there's part of me that thought, man, if my kids were listening to this person talk, this agent, this AI tool, would they know that it was not a human being?
Yeah, I mean, so the product is called Sesame. It's founded by one of the co-founders of Oculus, Brendan Irabay, and at the time was best in class voice interaction, just very human-like AI voice that you would interact with, named Maya. And you can still do that. I just go like demo, search for Sesame and do the demo. I will say that as of this morning, I was bouncing some ideas for a project off of ChatGPT voice interaction while I was like getting my car ready for something. And I don't have any, I didn't go look at their release notes, but it sounds like they've caught up a little bit. And the interaction was, it was a little bit distracting because I could tell how different it was since the last time I talked to her, which is maybe, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, because she was doing all the stuff that Maya does, which is these sort of like a lot of right, a lot of
natural language for patterns.
Yeah.
So
this coincidence of like not even pronouncing some things correctly and kind of stuttering, and it was like I kind of even couldn't. It was still in the novelty envelope sufficiently that I couldn't kind of actually functionally have a meeting with her because I was so focused on how different she sounded. And that was just, I mean, what, South by was like 2 months ago, 3 months ago?
That's what I wanted to hit on, right? You said Maya was leading edge in March, and it's, June, early June. It's not even 3 months, and it's being caught up or surpassed. And one more thing, I wanted to point out, as you were talking about the agent you were talking to, you said her, right? And that's where I think this is going to, is these things are becoming part of our lives. And, there's going to be a natural shift to make them more human than they are. And that opens up a huge can of worms.
I have some kind of like thoughts about this, like from product development that I've done that we've talked about previously. It's like humans, like human perception is like really, really nicely sharp after a really long time, going through its iterations. Our awareness of the synthetic nature of the bots that we're interacting with, I think it's going to continue to be really an ally to us now, 3 months ago, 6 months from now, next year. I think that, when I hear a bot, no matter how good it is, after a couple minutes, I know that it's a bot. I might not even be able to articulate to you why I'm pretty sure it's a bot. And the research that I've done toward actual commercial product development in this space, I've seen demographics of all ages, like users of like all age range, let's say, at the very least, all exercising more or less like a very similar amount of sensitivity to knowing that the voice agents that we're putting them in front of, that, I mean, we're not lying to them and saying this is a human, but where I can see the realization dawn upon them experientially is when their tone changes, when they start inside of the novelty envelope saying like, wow, she's really listening to me and she can hear me and she's understanding what I'm telling her. And then therefore does she think and feel, and where is she? Where's her body? All this stuff. But then, in my experience, it's less than 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes for best-in-class audio interfaces to show their cards to, even a much older person. In fact, I'm saying this because a lot of the research I've done for product development has been in the age tech space. So we're like literally putting bots in front of seniors, like people who are like in the twilight of their lives and are, older than, people in their 70s, 80s. Literally in the case of my father, 92, 91. And even they don't need like a PhD in like emerging technology to just realize with their own human ears, like, oh, there's something about this that is, and I know basically that AI exists. Okay, so that's all I really need to know. There's something about this interface that's telling me I am interfacing with a computer right now.
So
and
Matt,
I don't think it's going to change anytime soon.
The question on that, right? I think of Descartes, I think, therefore I am, right? So these things are, when do we say they're thinking, therefore they are, right? They become kind of an entity beyond just a computer. But the interface with the agent, like you said, we did some research in the Plutt report, and we're going to talk about this in a future podcast, that social connections are critical to longevity and lifespan, right? And health span. So do you think they'd get to a point where maybe your father knows he's talking to an agent, but that doesn't matter in terms of the social benefit that he gets from that interaction?
Yeah, I think it's important to divorce those two ideas. Is that one is that we are smart enough, our perceptual apparatus is smart enough to like make it extremely difficult much more difficult than I think people suggest, for us to be fooled. And that therefore, like, developers of those products should lean into the fact that this is a machine that you're talking to, that this is an algorithm or a program you're talking to. The second half of that is that if you look at the commercial success of products like Replica, like we talked about previously, and honestly, some of the traction that we've gotten on Gracie, this project that we were working on last year, it's also okay that it's not exactly a human. And in fact, it's in my experience with putting these things in front of consumers, it's better that it is very clearly not trying to be a human. Because at the end of the day, we want to be heard. We want to know that somebody or something else is listening to us. And just talking out loud and putting things on paper is therapeutic in and of itself. So I think that there's an immense value in leveraging technologies to, whether it be help someone who is like aging in place at home and is feeling lonely, or like someone who, it's like a stat that came out from research from a major, I think it was like John Hopkins or something, that was like 18-year-old is twice as likely to be feeling chronic feelings of persistent feelings of loneliness, hopelessness, and depression than like a 65-year-old. It's actually like the data is flipped. Like it's younger people who are in deeper S than the aging in place folks.
Yeah, sometimes the devices that we use drive us away from social interaction.
That's the sort of crux of it, is like they can be immensely therapeutic. They can really like help mend these sort of like feelings of persistent loneliness and despair. But then the sort of like the dark side and the deceptive side is getting stuck into this cycle of the stochastic parrot that we talked about previously. Like this, is like you go look at Replica, look at the reviews on Replica. Replica is an AI agent friend that is embodied as a physical 3D avatar in AR. Sometimes you can also talk to it by audio. It's one of the earliest success stories in productizing like agents as friends, as like your bestie. And if you go look at the reviews in the App Store, you'll see that people like it when the thing agrees with them. Yes. They don't like it when it disagrees with them. And what is human relationships but this sort of give and take between agreeing and disagreeing, and the tension and the sort of like complementary aspects of discourse. Otherwise, it's just somebody like repeating everything. It's an echo chamber. However, what has social media shown us, and the patterns of like adoption of social media shown us, besides the fact that we love echo chambers?
We do.
We love to say that we have a huge variety of friends in our network, and that we're very open-minded, and we like to be challenged, and we like to try new things. But in reality, is like if you give the person the idea is that you can live a frictionless life that has no problems or worries or no immediate stresses, and nobody's going to get angry with you or disagree with you, or you're going to do all that human stuff, they probably choose the easier one, because who wouldn't?
Yeah, that's a lot right there, right? The agent thing. I remember I was at church a couple of weeks ago, and there was a guest pastor speaking about his father. He's from Australia, and his mother had passed, and so his father was obviously lonely, but called him a lot initially, and then later stopped calling, and so he was worried about him, and found out that he had kind of just started interacting with his Alexa, and been able to have the conversations that he was needing to satisfy, right? And there was some situations that I'm not going to go into the details on, but that's exactly what you're kind of talking about.
Yeah.
What benefits do we get from that? But also, are there some risks? Are there some roadblocks potentially with not having true discourse?
It's tough, because I have a 4-year-old who is autistic, and so some of the challenges that he faces just have to do with the world around him not being built for him, and not having him first in mind, having more neurotypical people like myself in mind. And so some of these technologies are going to be wildly helpful to just like act as even a slight translation layer between the expectations of the reality around him and the UX of that reality and his own personal needs. It's going to be amazing. Genuinely. It actually already is amazing. But the issue, of course, is that can become a crutch. And this is nothing new. Like, we've seen this story, particularly if you raise kids, like, since the beginning of time, is like, what's the difference between helping a kid grow and coddling them, right? Like, how far do you go before? And there's no straight answer to it. The problem now, though, is that there is a direct economic incentive to increase shareholder value by quite large organizations who are very good at dividing us and isolating us, giving us the perception that we're interacting with each other, but truly actually just creating sort of like these individual opportunities for us to be individually monetized, for our attention to be monetized. We've seen that with social media, with other people at the other end, maybe other versions of other people, because we act differently on social media. So you're already kind of like, I'm not really interacting with my mom. I'm kind of interacting with like a slice of my mom when I text with her on like Facebook, or we share a post, right? So that's already like one level of abstraction. Like, the business model is working when that happens, because we spend more time on the platform, because we're not having arguments, because we're in this deceptive echo chamber that says that we're living a human experience, but we're actually living a compromised experience, and we're being monetized for it. Now take that one step further and say, like, instead of mom, you're interacting with MomBot. You're interacting with like your mom's agent, right? Like Ari said during our talk, he's been theorizing on this for like forever, is like that everybody's going to have an agent. And it's like, well, and this is literally what we were building. One of the reasons I stopped working on Gracie was because it was becoming too dystopian for me. It was like, yes, you can increase somebody's health span and give them companionship, but then like, are you instead of talking to your aging mother, are you talking to her bot that will just tell you what's been going on, and then that bot will then tell her what you talked about? And the idea, the theory that sounds nice on paper, is that will make you then engage with each other more frequently. But the actuality is the same thing as productivity in AI. It's like, AI hasn't given me my time back. It's just made me be able to take on 10 times as much of a rucksack as I used to be able to hike with before. I just fill the same amount of hours with more stuff. So it's a little bit, we have to be super skeptical about the promises that are being made and like the real incentives for the people that are making those promises.
Yeah, we made that as a central point of the report we pushed out, right? It's, tech's radical shift and humanity's choice. Because I think there's going to be awesome tools that come with this. One of them, not to highlight Google again, but it's the instant translation on the video chat, right? I could talk to someone who speaks Spanish, and if I'm not fluent, as they're speaking Spanish, it'll translate on my side in English, and then vice versa.
But what's the other side of that?
I'm not learning the language, right? I miss out on the cultural, ability to learn something new, right? And
the balance, right? It's like nobody's good. Like, you can't expect everyone to be a polyglot that knows 7 languages, right? But then at the same time, is like, I mean, I learned Spanish by just like going to Mexico, spending a lot of time there, making an ass of myself 6,000 times, which I still do to this day, but just dealing with that constantly until the point where I'm quite fluent in Spanish now. But I wouldn't have done that if everybody either spoke English, where I was going and spending time, or if we had like these babel fish in our ear. I just, that transaction just would never.
But on the flip side of that, right? Is it possible that we increase the cultural awareness because we're communicating with someone that we otherwise wouldn't have? Because people don't inherently have the curiosity to go and travel to another country. I think, you know, there's always the idea of both sides of that coin, and we always tend to look at one versus the other. And, you know, going back to your son, right? Is there a similar translation with that tech offers for them to live more naturally in a neurotypical world? And that expands to all kinds of, you know, impairments in all kinds of environments. So I think there's definitely the ability to segregate us and to, you know, put the filter between us and real life. But, you know, if we were not using tech right now, right, you know, we're in 3 different cities and we're having this awesome conversation. And so there's good that will come out of this, but we need to be careful in how we choose to employ it and allow it in our lives. I don't think we consider how we allow it all the time.
Yeah. And vote with your money, right? Like adopt stuff that is at least a little bit more in line with, I mean, I say that as a complete hypocrite because I use all the platforms, you know,
I got a great picture of you at South by sitting under a tent with your Apple Vision Pro on, right? Looking into the sky, working on something in between conference. It was awesome. It was my favorite picture from that event was after you get done talking about this AI and, you know, technology in the future, you're sitting there on a deck in downtown Austin in beautiful weather, doing some work with the Vision Pro. Great.
Yes. Fully encapsulated, because I think I had AirPods.
You definitely had headphones in too.
So Matt, I'm going to say thanks so much for these incredible insights. And I'd like to extend the invite to continue the discussion as we go forward, because there's just so much you bring. I learn every time I talk to you. Thank you so much. And I'd like to just offer my recap on really the direction the conversation's gone, and then open it up to you for any closeout comments, Matt. So in my mind, what we saw going back to January is the transition from edge computing to what I would call edge collect and edge process. So whether it's a lawnmower, a set of glasses, some earbuds, they're out there, they're pulling in data. They're not only collecting that data, but now we've seen the introduction of processing as well. So in my mind, we've gone from edge computing to edge collect and edge process. And I think what we've described here is there's this incredibly fine line that individuals are going to have to decide. They're going to have to vote with their feet and vote with their dollars about, are we going to concede from collect and process or sense and process to decide, and things, whether it's like your voice assistant, updating, changing the language, probably having very different parameters now in your house. I'm going to be polite and not say it so we don't trigger Nate. But in all seriousness, you know, that was something where that corporation made that decision, implemented it, executed it, and now you have a fundamentally different edge collect edge process or edge sense edge process there. And I really like the idea of how this line between sense and process and potentially going in decide could very well be the line of abstraction, where it's enhancing our perspective on the world, what we're hearing, what we're seeing, what we're able to take in. And you know, I'm going back, Nate asked about those glasses. One of the things I like about the Meta glasses is I can look at something, I can say, hey, Meta, what is this? And it'll tell me the type of tree or the type of dog or whatever. And I can just have access to more knowledge without even having to fumble with a phone. That's one thing. But if it starts to say decision points for me, and I like to use Google versus Waze as an example. I think Google ultimately says, here's the 3 ways you can get where you want to go. Choose which one. Fastest, fewest turns, no tolls or whatever. Waze, really, I think it crosses that line because it just tells you, all right, turn left here. And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You told me that 100 feet and I'm going 50 miles an hour or whatever. So I really like this idea of the abstraction and how it's not only you and the world, but it's you and other people as well. So Matt, thanks so much for illuminating me with that idea of abstraction versus enhancement. And that's how I'm going to personally define it.
That's a great dividing line. I think it's blurry, but you clearly know, I think when you're on one side or the other, it's not as much of a slippery slope. The difference between my car driving me and me driving my car is a very obvious difference. I guess the acceptance for me is that my car driving me is like extremely awesome, and it works amazingly. And I let my car drive me a lot now, suddenly, overnight. Like I'm suddenly in an autonomous vehicle, which is insane. But it's making choices for me all the time now. And I'm okay with it. I mean, I'm not only okay with it, I'm kind of thrilled about it. I don't know. And I love driving my car too. But for me, this dichotomy has been in my head a lot, just specifically in regards to my car. And it can go really far. It can get to the point where you feel like you're not at the wheel anymore, literally or metaphorically. But I don't know what the downstream implication of it is beyond, what do I then do with the time that my car has given me by not having to drive? Am I using that productively? Am I using it to ground myself again? Are my stress levels reducing? Like, what are the metrics that make my life better objectively? Is it giving me an extra day that I can take my kid to the pool? Am I doing that? Am I actually going and taking my kid to the pool, or am I just stacking another day of work onto myself? And then it's like comes back down to like personal discipline and having some sort of clear vision of what your ideal life is, and then not letting all the forces at play that are trying to divide your attention prevent you from doing that.
Matt, anything you want to close with, or anything else you want to highlight?
No, thanks for having me today. I'm honored to be here, and it was really nice to see both of y'all.
Yeah, it was great. And, appreciate your time, and maybe we'll continue this conversation in the next podcast, because there's still a lot that we didn't get to in embodied AI, right? Waymo, robots, all kinds of stuff that we've written about in the report. And so if you'd like to know more, please check out the podcast, give a like and share, go to www.theredthreadx.com, and appreciate you guys listening.
Thanks, Nate. And I'd like to close out with just a thought to riff off of what Matt said. I think the question I'm going to walk out of this discussion with is simple. Am I the driver or am I the passenger? And as long as it's my choice either way, then it's a conscious and knowing decision.